Four-time world champion Max Verstappen has just made a bombshell statement that is completely rocking the world of Formula One. During the weekend at the Hungarian circuit, after yet another frustrating performance, the Dutch Red Bull driver was categorical when asked about his team's chances of adding more wins in 2025. His response was direct and shocking. "We will definitely not win any more races this season." But is this statement just a moment of irritation, or does it reveal much more complex issues behind the scenes? To understand the scale of this situation, it is necessary to take a few steps back in the calendar. Red Bull, the team that has established total supremacy in recent seasons with Max at the wheel, is now going through an unprecedented technical crisis. The car that previously dominated the tracks is now facing basic grip issues. During the Hungarian Grand Prix, both Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda repeatedly expressed their complaints about the lack of grip, an issue that has persisted for several races. Max had his most disappointing qualifying of the year, making it to the second segment by just a second and a half, a margin that in the past would have been absolutely inconceivable. The embarrassment increased when Charles Leclerc, representing Ferrari, took an unexpected pole position, relegating Verstappen to 8th place, more than 3.5 seconds behind the fastest time. For a competitor accustomed to absolute dominance, this difference symbolizes a technical gap that cannot be underestimated. It was precisely in this scenario of disappointment that Max fired off the statement that is reverberating throughout the international paddock. When Dutch journalists asked about the possibility of Red Bull achieving a third victory in the current season, Verstappen's response was devastating. Definitely not, considering how circumstances stand at the moment. It's the current reality. The situation is transparent. There is absolutely nothing I can do to change that. I could show anger, but that will never make the car faster. These words reverberated like a seismic shock wave throughout the Formula One universe, especially within the Red Bull organization itself. Bernie Collins, former Aston Martin strategist and current Sky analyst, was one of the first voices to publicly question the Dutchman's attitude. In his view, while it is natural for Verstappen to show frustration with the performance of the car, expressing such an opinion is deeply demoralizing for the entire team. Collins emphasized that no driver should say they will not win any more races as a way of motivating the team. If he were a Red Bull engineer, he admitted, he would certainly be deeply discouraged. However, does Max genuinely believe that Red Bull cannot win again, or did he use this psychological strategy to put pressure on the team? Collins presents a fascinating theory. Verstappen may be using this statement as a powerful tool to communicate his absolute dissatisfaction with the current car. It is a way of conveying to the entire engineering department that radical changes are essential to regain competitiveness. The arrival of Laurent Mekies as the new Red Bull team leader introduces additional elements of complexity to this scenario. Mekies, renowned for his strategic methodology and expertise in solving intricate technical challenges, took on the responsibility during this delicate period. The expectation is that he will be able to diagnose and solve the fundamental deficiencies that Red Bull has been facing for multiple seasons. These deficiencies transcend the main car, affecting the entire organizational structure. The issue of the second driver represents another delicate aspect. With Yuki Tsunoda still seeking to establish regular consistency at Red Bull, the team faces the challenge of having only one truly effective competitor on a consistent basis. This circumstance drastically limits strategic alternatives during races and reduces the ability to obtain information for the development of the single-seater. Collins indicates that resolving this issue will be essential for the upcoming season. But let's look at the data that really matters. Despite all the controversy and controversial statements, Max still holds third place in the Drivers' Championship. However, his lead over Mercedes' George Russell has narrowed to just 15 points. Considering that there are still 10 races remaining after the summer break, this gap could quickly disappear if Red Bull maintains its current performance. This leads us to a fundamental question. Is Max really willing to accept a season without victories? A closer look at the situation reveals a Verstappen who is different from the one we knew before. The driver who won 4 consecutive world titles now displays an unusual fragility in his public statements. Some may see this as a sign of maturity, recognizing the technical limitations of his team. Others consider it a strategic communication mistake that could further damage the morale of an already fragile team. The timing of these statements could not be more inappropriate. With the summer break approaching, Red Bull will have a few crucial weeks to examine information, identify weaknesses, and make corrections. It is precisely during this interval that the team most needs cohesion and motivation to work hard. Max's words, regardless of the underlying motivation, certainly do not help to create this environment. On the other hand, there is a side that supports the Dutchman's radical honesty. In a sport where statements are often carefully considered and diplomatically correct, Verstappen opted for absolute frankness. Perhaps this is exactly the pressure Red Bull needs to wake up and take the necessary extreme measures. After all, no one understands the limitations of the car better than the driver who faces these difficulties at every turn. The situation becomes even more fascinating when we analyze Max's history of controversial statements. The Dutchman has never been known for mincing his words, especially when he is dissatisfied. This trait, which has caused controversy in the past, may now be used as a tool for internal pressure. It is a way of forcing changes that might otherwise take longer to materialize. The repercussions of these statements in the paddock have been extraordinary. While some defend Max's right to express his frustration, others question whether a leader should publicly expose his team's vulnerabilities in this way. Bernie Collins represents a significant group of analysts who believe that even with all the justifiable frustration, there are more constructive ways to communicate discontent. The pressure on Laurent Mekies grows exponentially with these statements. The new team boss must not only solve complex technical problems, but also manage the internal dynamics of a team shaken by the words of its lead driver. It is a challenge that will test all his leadership and crisis management skills. Looking ahead, the next few races will be decisive in determining whether Max was just being theatrical or whether he really did correctly assess Red Bull's chances. If the team manages to secure a victory in 2025, this statement will become just another episode in the Dutchman's intense personality. But if the season ends without a victory for Red Bull, Verstappen will be remembered as the driver who had the courage to express the reality when no one else wanted to acknowledge it. Formula One has always been a sport of extremes, where the difference between triumph and failure can be measured in fractions of a second. Max's statements at the Hungarian circuit represent much more than passing irritation. They reveal cracks in one of the most successful teams in the recent history of the sport and raise essential questions about leadership, communication, and pressure at the highest level of world motorsport. What's your opinion? Did Verstappen go too far with these statements, or did someone finally have the courage to express the reality that everyone already knew? Share your perspective in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel to follow all the analysis from the most intense behind the scenes of Formula One.